One other interesting thing, the story of the serpent in the Old Testament, book of Genesis, it seems to be the reverse of what the Gnostic Christians would say, or certain other cultures. The serpent in the ancient world, the pagan world, was regarded as a divine being, a sacred, I think even in India, the cobra and some of these things like that, they're seen as divine beings. So what the Bible story does is it reverses things. The serpent has been made evil, whereas the Gnostic, or the other side of the story, says the serpent, in some cases they regard the serpent as the creator, or at least a dispenser of divine wisdom. I mean, even the Bible does say, be as wise as serpents, but harmless as doves. So even there it recognises there is a wisdom, and it's like some of these things come out as little clues along the way, so not everything got flipped over and put back to front. There's still some traces, but you'd have to look into these other mythologies or other languages or other things like that to start to piece it together. So here, the serpent, which was divine wisdom, a divine being, is now, in the biblical model, it's a tempter and it's a power of evil. And what happens, the God of the Old Testament, Yahweh, Jehovah, whatever you want to call him, he is very upset that Adam and Eve have become enlightened. So there you have self-realization. Enlightenment for humanity is something that the biblical God was against, and yet it's the serpent that told them, now you are like gods. So it seems that the biblical model is the flip side, where humans are prohibited from becoming enlightened of their own accord. Now let's move on to another character, Lucifer / devil. And we're still looking at these very basic themes out of the Bible, because they're very important. So we've gone from the Garden of Eden, and then we've had a look at what the fall could be. Let's look at this troubling figure that a lot of people, even Christians, get worried about, Lucifer. Okay, now it's strange. Lucifer appears in the Old Testament, but the name that's been translated, Lucifer, is actually a Latin word meaning light bearer. And so you have to ask why have we got a Latin name in a Hebrew Bible, or why did they translate a Latin title for whatever it said in the Hebrew version? Because the Romans, or the Latin, was not around till about, say, 700 BC. I think that's when the Roman Empire, the Roman system started gradually. But they claim that the biblical stuff goes back to, if King David was about 1000 BC or thereabouts, 900 BC, this Garden of Eden story should have been written down, or at least the Old Testament should have been written down before the Romans even invented Latin. But for some reason, the Bible translators, when they put it into English, they still used a Latin title. Now, when people have looked into the term Lucifer, there were goddesses or gods with the word Lucifera as part of their name. So they might have had another name in front, and it just meant light bearer. So it might have been something like magnificent light bearer, or some title. So this is a common thing. So, but usually Lucifera was attached as a description of a goddess, a divine being of beauty and wisdom. So it seems that the Christians have sort of demonized that and taken that, because it was pagan, and given it an evil designation. And so then we get this term Lucifer. Another thing about Lucifer, people have looked at the Old Testament, and from the context they have made the comment that it could actually be a reference to maybe an earthly ruler who puffed himself up with pride and thought he was better than everybody else. But more importantly, it could have an astronomical reference to the planet Venus. And why is that? Because this Lucifer character in the Old Testament is called the day star or the son of the morning. So even when this character's being criticised for being proud and things like that, it's given this title, day star, son of the morning. And obviously Lucifer means light bearer. So it could be just a reference to an astronomical event, but it's given some sort of religious or theological meaning, but it's flipped over the Lucifer or the day star, which, because Venus is supposed to be that bright that you can even see it in the daytime, in the right location, that Venus is a day star, but it's been connected to Lucifer as if Lucifer was a fallen angel. When it talks about Lucifer falling and taking a third of the stars with him, again that fits in with the astronomical model or astrological model, because a third of the stars would cover 4 constellations. Most likely Cancer to Libra. So there again, when we talk about Lucifer being a sun deity, being cast out of heaven by angels, who could also be other stars or stars, as Lucifer is cast out, he takes a third of the stars with him, or the angels, and 1/3 would cover 4 constellations out of the 12, most likely Cancer to Libra. So he's taken that segment out in his departure. And I don't know how that works out in terms of astronomy, but a lot of these things seem to fit in with what we do know about language studies and looking into heavenly bodies and how they fit in with these religious myths. Lucifer was found in Canaan, which I guess is today part of Palestine, Egypt, and in Persia, where the Zoroastrian religion was. And the Zoroastrian religion was a duality. They had a main god who was all pure good, but he had a rival that would constantly be there to oppose him, and they needed, as far as I'm aware, they both had to exist, one with the other. If you got rid of the other one, well then it just didn't seem to work. So there's this idea of a perpetual ongoing battle between light and darkness, and I think the Zoroastrians talked about people being sons or children of light or the darkness. So again, whereas the Old Testament usually regarded the God as being in charge of everything, people didn't want to assign any evil doing to God, so they've latched onto this concept of an opposing agent or being that you can't get rid of, at least in the Zoroastrian system, and he gets the blame for all the things that they don't want to say God's in charge of. In fact, there is a verse in the Old Testament that says about God, I am the Lord and I create good and evil, and people try and say, well, that could be calamity, or that, well, even if it's calamity, chaos, or disasters, it's like that biblical God is saying, I do all these things, the nice things and the unnice things, the unpleasant things that shock people, because I'm the main person. But because believers couldn't accept that, they had to create someone else or projected onto some other character.